Hello and welcome to Tokenomics. I'm Manisha Gupta. The crypto winter has been with us for a while now, with even institutions and miners selling off and Bitcoin going below $20,000 mark at one point. Globally, the volumes have slid, and despite Bitcoin regaining the 24,000 mark recently, the Indian markets has also been sent into a tizzy as of late, with the Enforcement Directorate accusing WazirX of assisting Indian fintech firms in money laundering. The ED scanner has also been on 10 other Indian exchanges, lending further fears to market participants. So it's no surprise that this uncertainty has led to trading volumes in India declining by more than 50% in the last week as well. As the regulatory and tax uncertainty not only in India but globally continues to plague the markets, how long will this crypto winter last? To take this discussion forward, we have with us Ms. Napinai, N.S. Napinai, who's an advocate, and Vignesh Raja of the HBAR Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us. And Ms. Napinai, if I can start with you, there are plenty of problems when you look at cryptocurrencies, right from the regulators talking negative about it, a lot of skepticism, and what you did not want is the kind of scenario that we've seen evolving in last week or 10 days. 10 crypto exchanges is what ED is eyeing at right now. There have been sent summons. There are, conversations and surveys being done on various of them. How would you read that? Is this lack of clarity, lack of regulation, or is it just a free float market and the concerns because of that?
Manisha, thank you for having me here. Actually, this situation that you're seeing today dehors all the other problems we've seen with respect to crypto till now. Forget about the kind of skepticism and the fear psychosis when it comes to cryptos, the lack of clarity and certainty because of lack of regulation, etc. Here is a new situation that this recent series of ED raids, here is a new problem that has been highlighted. Now, primarily from whatever news reports I've seen, it appears that these raids were predicated on certain off-chain transactions that have been taken by some exchanges. Whether the exchanges have in fact indulged in off-chain transactions or not, and whether that amounts to a violation or not is something that only investigation can bring out. But in terms of a legal interpretation, assuming this to be correct. Now, here is the problem with this kind of a transaction. The first and foremost is off-chain means that you want to avoid blockchain and the transparency that it brings, and you do it almost like a paper transaction which will not have that accountability. So technically, it may not be off the mark for ED to claim that it is on par with Hawala transactions. And therefore, it assists money laundering. And therefore, the raids and possibly prosecution. Right. Now, this is something which has nothing to do with it being crypto or otherwise, because the minute you try to do something without the necessary transparency, without the proper KYC norms being adapted, where certain things may be just paper companies or fronts, etc. Now, all of these are indicative of something beyond the ordinary. And each of these lend themselves to the possibility of crypto being a means of laundering monies. And in this instance, the accusation also appears to be that monies which were, there are two separate parts to the transaction. There is a scam that has happened with respect to these Chinese loan apps, etc. And you have the second part, which is crypto as the means of taking the money out of India. So each of these individually can amount to crimes, and combined is just a stronger case in the hands of the enforcement agency.
Clearly.
So given this problem, that crypto is the basis for siphoning out money just makes it worse for the domain.
It sure does. So, there are two aspects to it. And as you were explaining to us, one clearly is about money laundering. The other is about FEMA here. And you mentioned about KYC and a lot of loopholes that we've seen happen in this space. What does it all really mean for the investors? Because the latest report from UNCTAD tells us that nearly 7% of Indian population does own cryptocurrency in some sense or the other. What does it really mean for them?
It's really bad news for them on money fronts. The first and foremost is if the investors have sought for off-chain transactions, then they themselves are in violation irrespective of the exchanges. And they are in violation on multiple fronts. I also wanted to add, even in the earlier instance, that off-chain means that you're probably then circumventing the tax that the Indian government has now imposed on these kind of transactions, these kind being crypto transactions, right? So if the investor has asked for off-chain and consequently they have also participated in the process of tax avoidance or tax evasion probably, then that leads to another layer of a possibility of prosecution. And finally, if an investor has just been doing their regular trading and using an exchange and had nothing to do with all these off-chain transactions, and yet because of the freeze that ED has brought in, now there the investors do have some remedies, but that is likely to be predicated on what the terms of their contract is with the exchange that they have been using. If it is in terms of remedies from the exchange, if it is in terms of other processes such as a prosecution, a criminal prosecution, or other forms of remedies, that's where it gets into the gray area, where general laws can be applied, and it can be. There is nothing in law which says that crypto is not part of the legal framework unless otherwise said so. You know, special laws are meant to provide for a domain with which has certain kind of complications that the domain brings in. Sure. But in the absence of special laws, you can still rely on general laws, and investors will have to look at, one, their contractual terms and the remedies available under general laws, be it civil or criminal prosecutions, and they can definitely try and seek recourse under these.
All right. So, yes, things are not getting easier. You know, last year it was all about on how do you pay taxes and how should you show it in your balance sheet. And then came the higher taxes at 30% of crypto tax, 1% of TDS. And then the kind of sell-off that we've seen in cryptocurrencies, the kind of layoffs that we have seen globally, and then the Indian markets as well. All of that has brought about a freezing of accounts for WazirX and Vault, and there are summons being sent to various other exchanges also. When you look at the kind of view that we have in the Indian markets with crypto, what's your sense on what is ahead of it? There are people invested, yes, but any new investors, would you encourage that at all?
Now, there are two kinds. The ones who have already invested also are in a bit of a difficulty because of the lack of regulatory frameworks. So I have always batted for regulation for crypto and for certainty in terms of government's position. Because unless and until government expresses its mind, not just in terms of general statements or cautionary notes as what RBI has been doing, but with parliament enacted laws and rules framed thereunder, unless that happens, there is no certainty and there is no safety net for investors, old or new. Now, this is where we stand even today. And we go back, Manisha, I remember some of our earliest shows we have done. I think it may be 5, 7, 6 years back and even earlier. Yeah, but from 2013, the government has been straddling the fence in terms of crypto. You had your first cautionary notice in 2013, and beyond the 2016, notices which then got struck down by the Supreme Court, you've not really had much progress. And after the strike down by the Supreme Court of the RBI notice for disproportionate, on the grounds of it being disproportionate, there has not been much action. We are still hearing about possibly a law, and unfortunately now it's diluted down to a public consultation. All this is not helping us, be it as investors, be it as users, be it as exchanges or people in the industry, or for that matter, be it for law enforcement. Because uncertainty also provides the possibility for crypto scams. Because when a scam happens, the victims are scared to approach the law enforcement because they don't know whether it'll boomerang on them. They are not even clear about what is the legal position today with respect to crypto. So for every stakeholder in this field, and for certainty in terms of what the future is about, and India is a huge, even if it's at 7%, when we are 1.3 plus billion, it's a huge number. So we are big players in terms of a global market, and certainty to ensure that we know where we stand with respect to crypto or not, tokenization or not, limited usage or not, is too relevant and critical. I do hope that we will see an immediate regulatory framework in the near future and not the distant future.
Well, that is well said. There's a long way await, and we are still waiting for some kind of a regulatory certainty here. And it's not just about crypto trading as well. It's also about Web 3.0, blockchain, the tokenization, the usage of it across in technology and daily life is what the street also is awaiting for. Ms. Napinai, thank you so much for joining us with your sense. And with that, it's time for a short break. But don't go anywhere. Polygon co-founder Sandeep Nailwal joins us on the other side.